Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are checking in from. This is Pete, the roaming prepper, and this is my Saturday Sitrep. I am not in the backyard because it's so windy in this part of Texas that you would basically hear every other word and wind and angry dogs. So, because my corgi wants to run to the back fence and talk smack to the German Shepherd on the other side, who apparently thinks it's awesome. So, not a probably not the best day to go out there and fool around in the back. But in any case, thank you for coming by. If you could like and subscribe, greatly appreciate it. This is my artistic outlet, but I do like to know, get feedback, so I'm making relevant material for the people who take the time to watch it. So definitely put your comments, let me know what your thoughts are. And there goes my screen is being weird. Okay, there we go. I'm back. All right, so first and foremost, I like to start all of my stuff. I'm doing a sound check now, and so if anybody can comment as to whether or not they can hear me, they can see me, all that good stuff, please chime in and let me know. It looks like it's working from my end, but I've been wrong before. So, next thing, the safety topic. Today's going to be, the first safety topic is your personal security, your personal information. One of the most important things nowadays, I mean, obviously there are a lot of dangers. Sorry, there's a corgi attacking something here. She's looking at her reflection. That's pretty cool. Personal information, not just the stuff with your social, driver's license, job application, stuff like that. But when you get solicitations in the mail, whatever credit card, this, little stupid Capital One flyer or Chase or Bank of America, whoever sends you something, make sure, even if it's just an application or an offer, you put that in the shredder if you're not going to use it. Now, here's why. It's very simple. That solicitation that just came in the mail will have your address, your name, and what your credit limit is based on the advertisement. Now, it could be fictitious, but having that information, you don't want to leave that in the trash. You want to be sure that it gets put somewhere where people can't do damage with it. So personally, any kind of financial, any kind of information, you get those update your car warranty type things, and they have your VIN number because they got it from Ford or Chevy or whoever. Shred. Don't make it easy for them. If you don't have a shredder easy enough, you can, do one of these and just rip it up. Now the corgi's looking at me because she thinks it's something to kill. But in any case, that's our safety topic today, is your personal information safety or information security. So make sure you take care of that business. Make sure it's taken care of and you don't leave anything useful for someone else. So let's go to the first part of the topic. There were a few things I wanted to cover today. First one is the Florida collapse. Exactly what the heck happened, right? This is an interesting point because there've been a lot of speculations about, it was a terror attack, it was a bombing, I even had one guy say it was an alien, and he may have just been a comedian. You get some characters in the internet, but let's look at it. Let's look at it from what I like to do, a more scientific standpoint. So, oops, and that did not share as planned. Bear with me just a second, and here we go. Sure. So, inspection report for collapsed Miami area condo details major structural damage. Now, it turns out this building was over 40 years old and apparently may not have been designed right. So over all the hurricanes, the floods, the wind, over 40 or 50 years or whatever time it is, there was failed waterproofing, failed drainage. And as hard as concrete is, keep in mind these buildings have concrete and then they have reinforced concrete, which is concrete with steel rebar in it to give the structure extra strength. If you get water over many, many years, continually pouring into crevices, into joints where steel and concrete meet, it's going to cause failure points. And apparently 3 years ago, and it's an unverified report, it was showing significant failing in design and waterproofing, which ultimately would have led to structural failure, as you see here. So at this point in time, you know, the building came down, and that was pretty horrendous. It's unfortunate that this happened, but, you know, some folks said, well, maybe it was like a bombing or some kind of terror attack. Well, let's back up as far as the definition of terrorism. What do terrorists want? Well, usually they're either after a political gain or a target, a specific target, you know, a president or a general or some politician or a newspaper person, or they're going to want to get fame for it, right? 9/11 was a horrendous attack on the United States. It killed 3,000 people, did a lot of damage. Strategically speaking, it did not stop our ability to go and kick people's asses. But it was a huge social and political win for Al-Qaeda at the time. It made them feared. It brought a bunch of money and a bunch of followers, but it turns out, you know, strategically speaking, the U.S. was functional. It didn't take the U.S. out. So blowing up this condo, yeah, you killed people, but that wouldn't make sense. And I'm going to go into an engineering explanation as to why this probably isn't a bombing, but we'll go to there in a minute. So the other question was, it was a mafia hit. They were trying to get some old retired mobster who went to Florida. Hypothetically possible that those things do happen, but this is a really messy way to take someone out. I mean, think about it. You just killed 200 people to get one moron. You could have just as easily waited for the guy to go in the parking garage under the building and shoot him or stab him, make it look like a robbery. So I'm not seeing a mafia hit. There was no fiery explosion, so gas isn't it. This looks legitimately like a structural failure. And you notice how it came down almost in layers in this picture. You see, it's like all the floors just went right down one on top of the other. That's not the technical sound for collapsing buildings, but you get the picture. So what happened there? So let's look at the actual video footage of the incident, right? So there we go. See it go down? And I did not realize, I thought it was just the facade of the building. It literally was the whole right side of this building just came crashing down at 3 a.m. So that's insane. So let's look at it again. I'm going to expand it a little bit so you guys can see it a little better. So let's go back. You see the way it just caved in, and everything caved in to the point of failure, right? And let's stop here for a second. Let's go. Oh, doggone it. Hold on. So, oops. There we go. So there it is. And you see the way it's caving in on itself, right? So this caving in on itself phenomenon, bear with me just a second here. There we go. The caving in on itself phenomenon looks like some of the structure actually failed in compression, and it was not an even strike. So you notice there was no explosive shock wave, right? Had there been a bomb, you would have seen ripples across the water almost instantaneously. If it was ammonium nitrate, you would have seen a white cloud. If they had used a military grade explosive, it probably would have given off a black cloud because of the petroleum product. You see neither. It literally just folds in on itself. And that's a classic. That's what engineers try to do when they knock a building down on purpose. So again, this is tragic because people and their families were just sleeping. So that's pretty awful. I mean, guys, that's really tough stuff to watch. And it's unfortunate. Now, some folks have compared this to the Oklahoma City bombing. So I'm going to bring that picture up because I actually went to some training and we covered this. Now, I can't discuss what they shared in the training, but what I'm going to show you is public sector stuff. So this is the Alfred Murrah building, Alfred P. Murrah, and this was back in 95. This was anti-government guy. He hit a federal building. He didn't do his homework, though. There was actually childcare on like the third floor. Notice the debris field. It didn't cave in on itself. It came straight down. It almost got sheared off. Now, a lot of people are wondering, well, how does that happen in a car bomb as opposed to a regular collapse? And I think the best way to look at it is, and I've seen, this is an engineering video. So some engineers actually replicated the phenomenon. So it has no audio. So I'm going to kind of walk you through it. But you see, so you see the building. And so this is the Murrah building. I'm just going to give a preview. So I'm going to fast forward here. And it shows you the 360 of the building. This is actually available on YouTube. The engineers who made this and the state actually published it. So let's go to the explosion part. Now, that's a simulated explosion. Now, immediately, first and foremost, let me just explain that an explosion like that, the shock wave would be moving at about 5,000 feet per second. It's a sonic speed blast. So windows would have been shattered, which they were everywhere. Okay, they didn't see that in this particular collapse. There was some in the vicinity that went down, but this is the way the collapse went. And if you look at it, so what wound up happening is when you have an actual bomb, especially the way this one was, the bomb blows outward. And in blowing outward, it lifted and pushes out anything in its way. And you can see here, right? It pushes up on the various floors with the shock wave, and then they collapse in. Now, had they put a similar bomb on the back, they would have flattened the entire building. There would have been nothing left. It would have been gone. But that's the phenomenon. So, and you notice here, very interesting stuff. Right, you see that lifting of the shock wave, and then it comes back down. You don't see that in the Florida incident. Florida just fell on itself. But if it's a 40-year-old building with a history of structural issues, somebody done screwed up in Florida. And now there might have 200 dead people there. But as you can see, this, again, there was no post-explosion cloud out of that Florida incident. Just from my own experience as an engineer and seeing some of this info, this kind of looks like what it is. So not, don't think that was a bombing, guys. But now somebody even speculated they were, it may have been an insurance scam. Somebody's trying to get some insurance. So don't know what to tell you there, guys. That's a interesting proposition, but that I couldn't speak to. And that's a very messy way. You could have done a fire, and we wouldn't have FBI and feds and civil engineers all running around location. Who knows? But we're going to move on. I'm going to go to the next one. And as an aerospace engineer, I thought this was going to be great, and it was kind of a disappointment. So let's share that screen. And here we go. This is the unidentified aerial phenomenon video or report. And as you can see on the left, it is a whopping 9 pages. Page 9 and page 8 were appendices of definitions. So, and there was one cover page. So basically it was a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5 page, 5.5 page summary. So long story short, I'm going to read the topics and highlights. Limited amount of high quality reporting on unidentified aerial phenomenon hampers our ability to create a firm conclusion of the phenomenon that has occurred. There are probably multiple types of UAPs requiring different explanations, and unidentified flying objects obviously can pose a challenge to flight safety for sure, and may pose a security risk. Now, they said, and this makes sense, this UFO report or UAP report, basically the feds are saying the data is collected so unexpectedly that there's no consistent way of collecting the data. So they don't exactly know what they are. Now, they did say there is a bias around military bases, and so they said 144 reports originated from U.S. government sources. Of these, 80 involve multiple observations with multiple sensors. So it wasn't like one, Joe Schmo says, "Oh, I saw a flying saucer," and everyone said, "Yeah, we didn't see it." No, it's getting picked up on radar. A fighter pilot sees it, calls it in. The radar operator sees it, but they don't know what to make of it. So what they're asking for and what's probably going to happen, because the classified report is with the Congressional Oversight Committee. I can't remember which one, probably National Security Council. They're going through it right now. And they also mentioned stigmas, right? Pilots have been afraid to report it for fear of being labeled a loony. They have noticed that there's been a disproportionate number of reports around military bases and cities with large airports. But they said part of the reason for that is probably because that's where you have a concentration of witnesses, video phone or iPhones, phones that can video, a lot of sensors. There's a lot of things going on around the bases and around larger cities that can cross-correlate disproportionately near military bases. So could it be our skunkworks or testing new toys around our military guys to see how they react, saying, well, we have the best Air Force in the world, so let's fly, our next generation Who's It over the base and see what the Air Force does, which wouldn't be surprising because it's happened before. But yeah, so they have a handful of UAP appear to demonstrate highly advanced technologies. Now that's concerning, because if it's not ours, okay, hypothetically, it could be somebody up in space, or it could be one of our enemies spying on our bases. Either way, that can be a concerning factor. And hey, Patriot Sandwich Maker, hey D9, how are you all doing? So that's basically what it's come down to. Is, oh, and don't worry about being late. I'm shocked. I remembered and got everything set up in time. So long story short, their feds are basically admitting these things are happening. We don't really know what's going on. And the things we think we know are going on are classified, and they went to Congress and to the president. So, but again, they do mention they lack a single explanation. Yeah, solicitor. Airborne clutter. It could be natural atmospheric phenomenon. It could be U.S. government or industry developmental programs that were not told to the Air Force or the Navy before they went flying around. And what the heck? And this is concerning, guys. Look here. So it could be airborne clutter, balloons, debris, recreational unmanned vehicles. To be fair, there's a pile of drones out there, right? There you go. Running errands and listening about aliens. I'll tell you what, Samich, that would be very scary if something came down and went, oh, hi, we're going to go eat your brains or something. That'd be kind of awful. But what they have categorized, yeah, absolutely. And what they're saying is, here are the categories we think could be. Among them, airborne clutter, natural phenomenon, something, or meteorite, whatever. US government or an industry developmental programs, but the last one scares the crap out of me, or the fourth one, foreign adversary systems. Somebody has deployed tech that not only we don't know, our F-15s have a hard time catching up to it. Why? And then they say other remains to be seen. So they're definitely acknowledging that there is an airspace concern and an aerospace fear that these things flying around, since we don't know what they are, have a probability of crashing into aircraft, causing an accident, causing a panic. But so their biggest thing was, we need to standardize how we collect the data, because we got all this stuff that came up randomly. A fighter pilot or somebody saw it, sent us the data, but it's not consistent. So they said they're actually recommending an interagency analysis process to make sure it works right. So we'll see. Sadly, the report is 9 pages. And like I said earlier, it's I'm going to let me put it in here in the comments. And that's the direct fed. I didn't want to give you guys a third-party link and take you someplace where they'd hack your computer or anything. This director of national intelligence released, and this doc was released under President Trump. They had to classify. It took a while. But that's the scoop, guys. So the feds are admitting it happens. They're not denying it. And they're basically saying, we kind of understand some of it, and some of it we have no clue. It may be classified beyond what these guys are allowed to see, but that's interesting. And full disclosure, as an undergraduate aerospace engineer, we were designing the hypothetical hypersonic rockets back in the mid-90s, and that was about the same time they retired the SR-71 Blackbird, which was the fastest manned aircraft ever. So they don't retire something like the SR-71 if they don't have something better behind it. So I'm wondering if this is going to lead to something better, or if something bad is happening. Pay attention. Like I always say at the end of my videos, you never know what you're going to get here. So yeah, that's super exciting. I mean, to me, I think it's cool, but I'm also, it's concerning what could and may happen. So we're going to go to one other topic here, which is, it keeps coming up because of the weather and shortages. So this one came out a few weeks ago. They're predicting, this news reporter was predicting chicken lumber microchips. We've already seen a few of these since they made this, but they're also predicting steel, metals, chlorine, and ketchup. Ketchup because Italy's in a drought, and they also lack truck drivers and canning capacity because of the COVID. They never caught up. So now they have the product, and it's either A, been diminished, or B, they can't get it to market because they have no qualified drivers. We're seeing the same thing here. So they're showing here, let me bring that back up. I thought I brought it up and it did not play nicely. So let's try that again. Here we go. So chicken, ironically, KFC introduced the new chicken sandwich, which was so popular that now they had to buy more chicken than they ever expected. But in doing so, they've tightened an even already bad supply line and made it worse. Chlorine also is on shortage. I don't know if any of you guys have a pool, but after Hurricane Laura, one of the biggest chemical plants making chlorine, which ironically is near the refineries where it gets some of the chemicals to make the chlorine, was damaged by Hurricane Laura and then had a fire. And so chlorine for pools and for water treatment is low. So right now, a 50-pound bucket of 3-inch chlorine tabs that you throw in your pool, $169. About double what it normally is. Normally they're like 50 to 70. So yeah. So computer chips are also an issue now. So if you're in the market, so what wound up happening, the car manufacturers took a hit during COVID. So tech companies now had all these people living in their houses. And this is what I talk about when I say supply chain and my MBA comes out of me. The supply chain will move if there's a new demand. So the supply chain was going to auto manufacturers. They took a hit, but everyone was now at home upgrading their laptops, their PCs, getting Netflix, whatever. So all the chips, all the electronic components went to the tech companies. All of a sudden, now is there a resin shortage as well? Shortage on resin. We'll look for that one here in a second. But yeah, the computer chips are, and that would make sense because if they're having chemical shortages, resin's not a natural compound. It's built from other things. So that would make a heck of a lot of sense. But computer chips, also gas, still running behind. So now we've had this big burst of activity, right? People are unlocking their cities, everyone's going traveling, but they can't staff enough crews. American Airlines, United Airlines have already reported that they've had to cancel or reroute people because they couldn't staff the aircraft. So again, another problem. Now, ketchup was a new one for me. I really hadn't paid attention. Shortages of ketchup, specifically in packets, started popping up around the country, and the plot has thickened. Haha. How did this happen? CDC discouraged dine-in service at restaurants, so everyone went to takeout. And basically, again, supply chain, supply and demand. It's like the toilet paper. Everyone went home, and now all the potty paper was gone, and so same thing, all the ketchup was gone. Maybe that's why they needed toilet paper, because they were eating too much ketchup. I don't know. Lumber also an issue, and part of it is construction has started booming again, but also a lot of the crews that harvest the lumber have kind of gone off the grid. So, but metals. As countries switch to green energy, demand for copper, lithium, nickel, cobalt, and rare earth elements is soaring. People don't realize getting a lot of these minerals is super destructive to the environment. I mean, a lithium mine is just a massive hole in the ground that is sometimes miles long. It's nothing like, a frack location that basically you just leave a wellhead and everyone else goes home, and then you can plant trees or whatever around it. Also steel, which blows my mind because the U.S. steel fire start logs, get them now. Oh, I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, that's a good one, D9. And that's concerning. You think about it. With the wood and the chemicals and the resins, that would make sense. And see, there's where you start looking at, well, these primary products have disappeared, and so now what's happening further down the food chain? So kind of scary stuff when you think about it, guys. Fiberglass. Well, keep in mind, fiberglass is partly a petroleum byproduct. And if petroleum is getting super expensive, plants have been damaged. Yeah, it's everyone's saying it's going to level off at some point. My fear is that it will not. My fear is that inflation will hit us before everything catches up. And we're going to get the double whammy of reduced supply and inflation, loss of the value of the dollar. So hopefully I'm wrong. I mean, if I could predict that, we should all invest and make $1 million. But yeah, it's concerning, and it's not just us. So the UK is also reporting some issues as well. So I'll share that with you guys now. UK facing summer food shortages due to a lack of lorry drivers, aka their truckers. They've lost 100,000 drivers during COVID. They just didn't come back. So yeah, bottom is a level. And sadly, it may be a painful level for these folks. So they have a shortage of workers in the warehouses, food processing. They're getting hit with the same things we are. And one Polish driver who had lived in the country before Brexit, who arrived in Doncaster Airport to respond to the crisis, was refused entry by Border Force because he did not have his paperwork in order. So they had guys show up, but they were not properly documented. And the UK is definitely locking everyone up or not letting them in. And now they don't have the drivers. So it's this really weird combination of things going on. And it's causing problems. It's not just us. It's the UK. It's everybody. And so my fear is these stressors on the system will ultimately start causing problems. So my last topic for today, and it's one we've been hitting back and forth, is Taiwan, right? We've got Russia in the Caucasus right now, picking on Ukraine, doing flyovers of British vessels that are allegedly in international waters, but the Russians didn't want them there. So they were dropping live ammunition about a kilometer in front of the destroyer. The Russian Navy commander actually has stated they will fire on the Brits if they do that again. So that would be bad. Because Georgia, who is an ally to us in certain ways, who used to be a Soviet satellite, had gunboats in the area too. I don't know what they were doing. They were doing their own thing, but the Russians threatened to shoot them as well. So that could turn that whole Black Sea area into a big kerfuffle very quickly if they start doing that. But then you go to the Pacific, and we have China threatening to take over Taiwan. Like most nations, the United States has no formal diplomatic ties, but they're the biggest backer of the island. In a speech in Taipei, Raymond Green, deputy head of basically the de facto industry, hey, Guns Coast to Coast, good to see you, said when he first worked in Taiwan almost 2 decades ago, everything it did related back to across Taiwan Strait issues. Over the past 3 years, efforts have been overwhelmingly focused on deepening ties and working together. But they're having a lot more. Taiwan's basically pulling away from China, and they're talking now with the Philippines, the US, the Japanese, all the other neighbors, who are also people that China is bullying. So the problem is the Navy ran a war game, and I didn't put the article up here, but here we go. The U.S. no longer sees Taiwan as a problem in China ties. Now, and I didn't know how to take that, because it was almost like saying, we don't really care about them. But if you go through the article, and this one's on Reuters, you start seeing that the United States no longer sees Taiwan as a problem with China, but an opportunity to advance a free and open Pacific, etc. But we all saw what China did to Hong Kong. They've systemically lost their freedoms in what should have been kind of like this free sub-state. And now they've shut down the internet on them a few times, and they've arrested a bunch of them. So if history repeats itself, there's more than likely an opportunity that these guys are going to do the same to Taiwan. So the problem is China has been flying large flights of attack aircraft in the vicinity of Taiwan. I don't know if it's to intimidate them or to test the defenses, but they've been pushing the envelope. And then this gentleman, and this is from the Army Times, this new article. He said, if the Army is serious about countering the Chinese military in the Pacific, it needs to permanently station an armored brigade combat team in Taiwan, kind of like what we have now in Romania, because the Russians were pissed about us letting Romania be allied to NATO. So the U.S. put a Bradley fighting vehicle group in there. So, and it pissed the Russians off even more because now they can't pick on Romania because there's American troops. So they run the risk of attacking our troops while attacking Romania, and that'll get them into a shooting war. And they don't want that. They just want to be a bully. This guy's saying we could do the same thing. They call this a tripwire force, where essentially you are taking a unit and you're putting it there and saying, well, if you attack them, you're going to hit our guys and we're going to have a problem. The Navy did run an exercise, and they said the way we're set up now, if China made a hard run at Taiwan, there's a 50-50 chance they'd actually win the fight and take over Taiwan, and that it would be ugly, bloody, and there would be a lot of civilian casualties, and it would be an air fight from hell and a naval fight from hell. The Chinese have been testing tactical nukes to knock out carriers. So the carriers have been now going around with submarines that have hypersonics on them. So you see how this is going. Basically, they're saying, if you launch something we don't like, we're going to blow up your base before you get Taiwan, even though you may nuke our carrier. That sounds really awful. So these guys, what they're trying to do, they're saying, if we put some soldiers there, it might force China to the table, because now they can't just go and bully Taiwan and, oh, there's some Americans floating around there. There would legitimately be a military base. But China may react poorly to that and do something somewhere else to screw with us, right? So they're trying to kind of figure out how to approach this. So this is definitely something to watch. And it's a note here, the United States, before the U.S. formally recognized the Chinese government in the 1970s, the Army had 30,000 troops stationed in Taiwan. Currently, there are no present full-time active bases. There's some advisors and some like specialty teams that are there, but we don't have a real footprint, which means we would have to come from the Philippines, Japan, or the fleet. And the Chinese know this, right? So they're going to try and push, they're going to try and launch stuff at our fleet to push us as far out as they can. China has a massive ballistic rocket, not nukes, but classic like explosive-based ballistic weapons that they can beat the crap out of Okinawa and Guam. And we already know they can do this. So, and that's to say, you know, North Korea doesn't go batshit and start sending rockets everywhere, but they have enough technology to force the Navy to keep its distance, and in doing so limit our ability to defend Taiwan. And the way the war games have been playing out is it would give them enough of a window to try and mass attack Taiwan. Now, it could go badly because their Air Force isn't a match for ours or for Taiwan's, and it could wind up being like the Battle of London, Battle of Britain kind of situation, where a bunch of they're going to lose a bunch of aircraft fighting over Taiwan against a technologically superior and better trained force. They've pointed out that the maneuvers the Chinese do are very antiquated and very remedial, these big formations, and they can only launch out of one base at a time because they have trouble coordinating multiple bases. It's not like the Russians. The Russians could send 50 aircraft from 50 different places, and they'll all show up, get in a perfect formation, and go and mess with someone and come home. The intel and the stuff I've seen on the public venues is that China doesn't have that ability, but they have a lot of stuff. And I think that's the philosophy, like the Korean War, just throw numbers and see if you win. And that's assuming, you know, a president doesn't, or somebody doesn't pop a tactical nuke on something, and then that's a whole nother game. Hopefully this is all hypothetical, but very risky, dangerous, because if they do take Taiwan, it gives them a great launching pad to basically block the South China Sea. And, you know, 50-60% of world trade goes through that area. So Indonesia, India, all this other stuff, it's a risk. There's a little bit of brinkmanship here. In the meantime, China just had another fist fight with the Indian soldiers up in the Himalayas, and they beat the crap out of each other up there because they have a gun-free zone. So they go and beat each other with fists. And they actually killed a bunch of guys up there last year. They got into it with an Indian patrol, and they started arguing about where the flag was and whose border it was. And they got into a fist fight that resulted in several people being beaten or choked to death. Someone got kicked off a cliff. They hit one guy with a rock and killed him. It was like some caveman stuff. So, yeah, China's really pushing the borders, and it's concerning. Oh, yay, popular mechanics. Here we go. What would China need to invade Taiwan if they wanted to do it? China said, the Pentagon says China wouldn't invade Taiwan in the near term, but is still increasing its efforts to build up air, land, and sea forces to make the jump. According to Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mark Miley, General Mark Miley, he testified in front of Congress stating that, according to Miley, China's leadership wants to be ready to capture Taiwan by 2027. So in the next 6 years, they've already said it internally within their country that we will take Taiwan back. But they're not there yet. Despite the buildup, however, Milley said he saw no indication China intended to seize Taiwan, which it regards as a breakaway province. Such an invasion will require extensive preparations. Milley said there's no indication China's preparing to move anything substantial in the next 12 to 24 months. It's taken, and then they go on to say that there has been a dramatic series of reforms to transform the military from a low-tech, large-number force to a technological force that can get on par with Western, i.e. NATO, allies and kind of hold them off. And again, remember, China doesn't have to beat us. They just have to stall us long enough to gobble up Taiwan with numbers, and then the fight's over, because then it becomes a question of, okay, now what do we do? So interesting stuff. And again, they're making all these little air bases and rocket bases out of these shoals all over the Paracel Islands. So that's another challenge point for a lot of us. The allies is to, what do we do with these bases? Do we have to bomb all of them? And so very, very interesting. China has also embarked on a dramatic amphibious ship construction effort. They're trying to replicate the ironically, the USS Taipei, and it's the Taiwan and the Taipei, or shoot, I can't remember. The amphibious carrier aircraft, the amphibious helicopter aircraft carriers that the Navy has, which is pretty much staffed with the Marine Corps expeditionary units. If you look at the picture there, it kind of looks like ours. Let me see if I can bring that up a little bit bigger. Tweet. Hold on a second here. Bear with me. Yeah, that looks a heck of a lot like our amphibious aircraft aircraft carrier, doesn't it? So it kind of makes you wonder, where are they getting the specs from? That's just, and I won't get into how China's infiltrated our IT infrastructure here in the U.S. John McAfee wrote multiple tweets and very detailed emails, which I've seen, and then he had an Epstein happen to him. So I don't want to be Epsteined, so I'll simply say that it's very interesting that these things have happened and that their aircraft carrier looks a hell of a lot like ours. So one question, and it's a war game I had planned out with some other people in my extended mag here in Texas and Louisiana. It's a bunch of both corporate colleagues and family and service members who've all kind of agreed, well, if your city gets it, you come this way kind of thing, and basically throw all your preps in the trailer and haul ass this way, or vice versa. And so one of the scenarios one of the guys proposed was, in order for China to stall us, they could really do a number on us by NEMP. And that was, and this became even more conversation point with my little online crew regarding how they would do it. So think about it. Remember, if they want Taiwan, they don't have to beat the US completely. They just have to screw us up enough where they can do their thing before we can go whack them on the head with a hammer. And more than likely, if that happens, Russia's going to go grab somebody, right? Because Russia's like, oh, you're fighting with China? I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go screw with the Ukraine and take half their country because I feel like it, because you've got your own problems. So a U.S. Air Force base in Texas has taken the first steps to guard against an EMP attack. Officials at the Joint Base San Antonio and Lackland, Texas, issued a request for bids to carry out a survey of the facility called the Petroleum, Oil, and Lubrication Complex. Basically, they're going to identify their vulnerable equipment and then reinforce it. Now, the congressional paper on the same topic for the USA said that for under 1.5 billion, maybe 2 tops, they can put enough safeguards in place that even if we took a hit from an EMP, right, it dropped the grid, they'd have enough ability to bring up sections within 24 to 72 hours and get. So imagine we get hit, we get knocked out of the grid, and Houston and the refineries are back up in 48 hours. And then Washington's back up, which would probably be the first city. And then the Port of Los Angeles is back up. I don't know where that went. I don't know how much funding was going. There was funding. They may not be telling us because it's super secret stuff. But this one was public. This is in Live Science. And this Air Force base is actively involved in reinforcing its weaknesses. Okay, Patriot Sandwich Maker, thanks so much. And yes, I think everyone on the live stream is from Texas, believe it or not. By the way, Sandwich Maker is from Texas as well. So, I'm not going to go whoop or guns up because you guys get real salty if I do the wrong college. And I went to school up in the Northeast, so nobody gets my jokes anyway. But in any case, EMP is a massive burst of electromagnetic energy. We all know that. The explosion, basically, the gamma rays hit the ionosphere and release electrons. And then the electrons, now you have a large negative charge. It wants to go somewhere. And so it goes down to the earth. Basically, lightning from hell. Interesting fact before I move on is most commercial airliners are designed to take a hit from lightning and stay up. So I'd hypothesize that if we did get EMP'd, unlike what you've seen in like 1 second after, you may not see a slew of aircraft come crashing to the ground. What you might see, though, is the comms go out. So now we have some airplanes crashing, a bunch in the air, and nobody knows where they're going all of a sudden. They don't know where to land. They can't talk to anybody. And so they're going to start landing everywhere. And that would be an interesting study to undertake. In any case, the military is actively doing this, not just on this base, but several others. And I think that's a good thing. But guys, that was kind of all the topics I had for us today. The only thing I could tell you guys, there's really extreme heat out west. I covered that on Tuesday. There's a lot of challenges going on at one time. So again, leverage, going back to the business thing, leverage your knowledge or study and understand your personal supply chain, right? Where do you get stuff from? If you buy groceries at Walmart, but there's a local farmer's market, go make friends with the farmers. And now you've shortened your supply chain. You took Walmart, its wholesalers, and everything out of the picture. You now have someone local. Instead of buying metal products from the store, find the local welder. Now, granted, they might run out of supply too, fair enough. But where you can change your personal supply chain, you can save money. Yeah, absolutely, D9. Because when things happen, they happen like that. Have you noticed these incidents, they come in bursts now? It's not like spread out, and they happen really fast all at once. So again, if China wanted to make a run at Taiwan, an excellent opening move would be to either hack or EMP the US just enough to screw us up. to where we're not functioning quite right, right? Because now the president's going to have an issue at the home and an issue overseas, and it's going to string out the supply chain and what we have, our attention, our personnel, everything. Because where do you send the National Guard? To the streets or to go fight China? So that would be a great play. Now, to be fair, we're probably able to do the same thing to them. So they have to be careful as well, because I'm quite confident the US could go and screw China up really good if they were pissed off enough. So my biggest fear is that people are going to keep playing with this, and somebody's going to push the wrong button and all sorts of bad things will happen all over the world at once, and nobody will know why because they weren't paying attention. But look at your personal supply chain and see how you can change it to better serve you and your family. So it's funny you mentioned that, Dinan. I was thinking back to my guard days, and one of the things they did, they would park some of the Humvees inside the armory, right? So if you go by any National Guard base, you see all the vehicles outside, right? They would park some inside the armory and disconnect the batteries. And then if they weren't using the Humvees out there, and it was cold where I was, right? So it was prone to being -10 for weeks at a time. They would pull the battery cables off the battery. But it was two things. One, you were protecting the vehicle from cold and battery death, but also potential EMP strike. It needs a circuit, right? Electricity has to follow a path. It won't typically jump air unless there's a really big voltage differential. So one thing is, you could put it inside a building, will shield it somewhat. Mythbusters actually did, was it Mythbusters? They did an experiment. They created an EMP, basically a Gauss field, and started driving different age cars through it to see what would happen. And it turned cars off. I got to find that video. Now it's going to bug me. It legitimately turned cars off, but most of them, you turned the key off and you turned it on and they came back on. So again, you could disconnect batteries is one thing, put it inside a metal building. When you make a Faraday cage, it's actually using what they call the Gauss principle. So Professor Gauss from God knows when, and I vaguely remember it, he took an orb and he put a little probe in the middle, and he ran current through the orb, and it had a air gap. And they found that electrical current will go to the surface of something. That's why if you're in your car and you get hit by lightning, they say just stay in the car for a while, is because the electricity has gone to the shell of the car and is going to the ground. It's not really the tires, it's the fact that you're inside and the electricity's quickest route is around. Now, that's a good question. That would be one EMP professor, EMP doctor. He was on Gray Man a few weeks ago. He had some interesting thoughts on that. It probably wouldn't hurt that it be sealed up, but even think of the metal outbuildings like the ones you see on 45 going into Dallas area, or up 35 if you're going through Fort Worth, the two parallel roads. You see those metal buildings that they use for oil field shops and mechanic shops. If you do something like that and you have it properly grounded, hypothetically, the current would go to the surface of the building and go around. I don't know if it would jump like that, but layers, it will keep it protected better than it being outside. Again, I heard from someone you can bypass the electronic. Unhooking the battery cables, right? Like the Humvees in my old base, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, yeah, you can unhook them. So if you have an ATV or something that you're keeping as a backup transportation device, you can actually take the batteries out if you're not using it and just set them, because your barns are all metal. That's interesting. I wonder if you can ground it and basically create a big Faraday cage out of your barn. Man, I do not know enough about that side of physics. And I have my physics book there, but I don't think it covers the Gauss principle. It's an ancient physics book too, because it's held together with duct tape. But do I have? Nope. Thermodynamics, mechanics of material. Nope, nope, nope. Crap. I know some physicists I can go bug though. So I might go bug some of my friends and see what their thoughts are. One deals with radiation, actually. He's a couple of them are radiation physicists. I might have to go bug some science colleagues and see what their thoughts are. But yeah, keeping it protected, keeping it layered. Even if you put your walkie-talkies in a 50 cal can and close it, that will somewhat protect it. Now, some folks say you can line it with foil or some other material, but I don't know enough about the physics of these small electron waves. But yeah, I'll shoot a few people an email and just ask if I can find it online. I will post it, or I'll go over it on my YouTube channel, or I'll put it on Instagram too, because that would be interesting. If you already have a metal barn, is there something you can do to create kind of that Faraday, or maybe even put a metal cage inside the barn where you park or store batteries, electronics, stuff like that. Then when you need your ATV, you just go pull the battery out and stick it in your little buggy and off you go. But that might protect it. Huh. Oh, you got me thinking there, man. That's interesting. All right, we're going to have to come back to that one, but that would be interesting. But yeah, look at your personal supply chain and see where you can take advantage of it. And like you pointed out, if you have a metal building, you have an outbuilding from your home that can be repurposed or reorganized to provide extra stock, food, clothing, whatever, to keep you better prepared, that would be great. Because what if that hack for the pipeline took out a chunk of grid? Hell, Texas went down because of a damn weird storm. And we knew it would last maybe a week or so and everything would get fixed. Imagine if someone legitimately hacked LA. I mean, LA'd be screwed, but then imagine all the shipping that comes in on the West Coast. We'd all be screwed. So take those times and take those moments. I've been posting a lot of stuff on Farmers Market, on Instagram, actually. Farmers Markets, finding local farms. That's why I'm a big fan of HEB here in Texas, because they source regionally. They do get stuff from overseas, but they're getting the beef from and product from Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, the Gulf Coast, Arizona, Nevada. They're bringing whatever in and out. Their supply chain's super short, which is why their quality and their costs are so good, is because they're not paying as much as so-and-so getting it from, frozen food from God knows where. So keep that in mind, guys. Take that time. Try to save yourself some money. And at the same time, make sure you're ready. And definitely help the new preppers. I've seen a lot out there who are just freaking out, especially after the pipeline hack. They're starting, the little lights are going on. And a lot of them are younger too, and they don't know what to ask. So they kind of panic. They're like, I know I'm not ready. I just don't know what to do. And so they kind of lock up. So yeah, if you can reach out to college kids or anything, yeah, implementing, patronizing small shops, garage sales, or the antique shops, you can find all sorts of goodies. I actually found the hand drills we used to use in shop years ago, because they didn't trust us with power drills because we kill each other. So we had the stupid hand drills. I'll tell you what, your batteries go down or they zap your grid, and your Ryobi and, Black & Decker won't start. That'll still work. It'll be interesting, but you can make things go like that. Also, make sure you have good hand tools. That can't be said enough, because you can't fix anything if you don't have the right tools to do it. Also, for those of you wondering, there are gun shows going on in Odessa, Corpus, and Houston just had their hurricane seminar, or the Hurricane Expo. So we may have missed that one. But there are 3 or 4 gun shows going around. So if you need food for your pew, or you just need a sling so you can walk around with it and not look like a heathen, go check them out. They also had a lot of handmade knives. So definitely help your local stores and look at your own personal supply chain before you buy something. and see if you can save some money. The shorter your supply chain is to your home, the better it is for you if something happens. So in any case, guys, I've got to take the corgis out before they either pee or destroy my kitchen because I hear them fighting out there. So until next time, if you're on the road or going to be on the road, Godspeed to all of you. Y'all be safe, be careful, and help someone out if you can. Until next time, we'll see you later.